My friend, the more I do this, whatever the hell this is, the more people have suggested to me sometimes a word of thanks, a bit of an encomium that says, thank you for the, or thank you for bringing this up. And I'm thinking, I think sometimes, and I've said it before, I think we need to get back to the basics of love, I think is Waylon Jennings one time intoned, but I think we need to sometimes remind ourselves that not everybody is familiar with some of these terms, because when you hear this for the first time, if you're like most normal people, and you're talking about menticide and bluebird and artichoke and MKUltra and all of this stuff, you think, what is this? And it sounds nuts. It sounds crazy. And in turn, they'll say, you're crazy. So let me just warn you, whenever you talk to somebody about this, if you do, be very careful. Because they'll say, are you talking about that? What's the matter with you? And you can say, you know what? This isn't for everybody. I don't blame you. This isn't for you. You know what? Better you not get involved in this. What do you mean? No, look, this is tough. It's like any new endeavor. Try learning anything. Try getting instructions, for example, in a new religion or anything operational, and you'll find out this is wild. Because remember one thing about intel, if you can imagine it, somebody's already thought of it. This idea of, what do you think warfare is? Warfare is not about necessarily, guns and ballistics. It's about changing the way people think. It's about everything. When it comes to brainwashing, oh my God, this goes China. Remember the Pueblo? Remember Booker? Ride Captain Ride. This we've known about this. So what I'm not trying to say, well, in our generation, but I think it's important that we continue to train and pass on lore and information, because the more you know, the more powerful you are. And that's, I think, pretty cool, as the kids say. Now, when it comes to MKUltra, this is beautiful. By the way, MK does not mean, I'm sorry, it does not mean what am I saying? It does not mean mind control. MK is a prefix, and it might be technological. There's MKAZ. It's a CIA prefix, so it's not mind control. Just don't do that, please. For the love of God, don't fall into that. What's interesting to note is that MKUltra was, I guess, controversial from the beginning because, let me go back a little bit. I know I'm all over the place, so get used to it. When you watch even shows like Get Smart, James Bond, anything, even Naked Gun, there was always that lab guy. Bond had his Q, and other people have these names. These people that are always finding new ways to do dirty. Let me go back a little bit, give you an idea. Did you know that at one point before the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, the KGB then, which is the FSB now and others, but the KGB actually had agents go out to collect, this is true, jokes, to find out what people, how are the populations joking? What are they joking about? Because they said you can tell where a revolution is going or where people are going by virtue of what they find humorous, what's subversive, what's underground, and what's... And there was one joke that I heard, I'll never forget this. Somebody said that, why does toilet paper have two sides? One side is to be used. The other side is to be sent to Moscow for processing. The point is something to the effect that there was too much paperwork or bureaucracy, and that was their joke. Maybe not the funniest joke, but the point is it gave people the idea of this interesting way about people are thinking. So propaganda, and by the way, propagandum, from the propagation of the faith was Pope Gregory. Propaganda is not bad. Propaganda is always used in a negative connotation, just like freedom fighter versus terrorist. You know that routine. But MKUltra has always been one of the most controversial and really unsettling ideas ever conducted by the CIA, ever. And it began, this is legit, in 1953 during the height, and by the way, don't ever let me hear you say height. I will track you down. It's height. During the height of the Cold War, when intel agency feared that communist governments had discovered ways to control the human mind. Remember, if you can think it, they've already thought about it too, if you can imagine it. And always watch to see how informational, how stories and lore and, Le Carre and others all presage what we're doing right now. And by the way, the more you listen to Candace, they're loading MKUltra on like you wouldn't believe. And it's not necessarily the Manchurian Candidate, in shooting. It doesn't matter. It can work elsewhere. But let me continue. There were all kinds of reports coming out of China and the Soviet Union suggesting that, among other things, inter alia, that prisoners of war and POWs had been subjected to this weird kind of conditioning and coercive interrogation techniques. And American intel officials, by the way, remember, they don't want to do this to stop it. They want to find it out, to learn it and implement it. Okay, this is not for the weak here. And also, do not think good guys, bad guys. Do not think of this Manichaean, apodictic left and right, who's good. It's neutral. Warfare is neutral. Somebody always thinks you're the bad guy, and the people that agree with you always think you're the good guy. There's no such thing as good guys and bad guys, okay? All right. So the intel people believe that the U.S. needed to really understand these methods and possibly develop them first. Don't kid yourself. That's what they wanted. So the result was MKUltra, which was this incredibly sprawling, all-encompassing, and deeply secret research program designed to explore whether human behavior, human even thinking, could be manipulated, could be controlled, could be broken through maybe chemicals, PSYOP, psychological pressure, psychometrics, psych meds, and any kind of experimental interrogation programs and methods, which I love the idea. Also, confusing people. They also learn through cults, through music, through culture, and don't forget also at the time how Tavistock, Frankfurt School, all of these other seemingly disparate groups were also part of this wonderful concatenation and chaining of groups and disciplines that all pretty much fell into the same kind of a slumgullion and gumbo of all of this mass and mix of things. Now, the project ran for about 2 decades. Well, that's what they say. It's still going on now. Remember, believe nothing. These are some of the best liars ever, and they want you to know they're lying. It's what they do. And sometimes it's what we do. But I'll deal with that later. This involved more than, they say, like 150 to 200 sub-projects that were carried out at universities and hospitals and prisons and psych wards, research labs all across the U.S., Canada. And many of these folks had no idea they were participating in a CIA-funded intel experiment. Remember what I told you, which is important. The CIA sometimes doesn't announce itself as CIA. There's about 17. Tulsi Gabbard right now is DNI, Director of National Intelligence. There's about 17 known, explicated, known agencies. 17 that they acknowledge. Multiply that. Plus, there's Five Eyes at how we work with each other. Anyway, not to complicate it, but don't think, when you think CIA, don't think there's a place and people with business cards with the parking lot. It's not that. It's kind of like quantum mechanics, these ideas of where electrons are. There's probability that we should find them there. Well, it might be CIA, but it's part of some cloud of different interests. All right. Now, the man who was placed in charge of MKUltra, this was the granddaddy and the grandpappy of them all, was Sidney Gottlieb. This is the dude. This is a feller. This is he was a chemical, as a matter. This was a chemist working in the CIA's technical services staff. Ooh. Imagine those Christmas parties. Gottlieb oversaw this huge network of researchers and exploring how drugs and hypnosis and psychological manipulation could influence the human mind. And I mean, they went through psychoactives and hallucinogens, and also religions and hypnosis and prayer and meditation and working with monks, and it's wild. Transcranial electromagnetic stimulation, really fascinating stuff. And the ultimate goal, of course, was, of course, ambitious, but the CIA, we wanted to know whether it could develop substances or techniques or manipulations or applications of behaviors capable of forcing confessions. Remember, confessions, not real confessions. Don't think that a confession is you want somebody to admit what they've done. You want to get somebody who can admit to doing something maybe they didn't do. See? How about erasing memories, creating unwitting agents who could carry out actions without knowing it? This is the Manchurian Candidate. This is perfect. And one of the most famous experiments of MKUltra involved experiments with psychedelic drugs, baby. Come on, baby. Get down, baby. Especially LSD. That's right. Was it lysergic acid, diethylamide tartrate? Remember Hoffman and oh yeah, baby. And at the time, and by the way, these experiments, think Whitey Bulger, think Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, the alumni of this in prisons and organizations and schools, it's wild. So at the time that LSD was a relatively new compound whose psychological effects were not really understood. By the way, little side note, if you're a Dragnet fan, by the way, Dragnet, the original Dragnet with Jack Webb, one of the funniest shows ever, you have to go and see it was called Blue Boy. There's one episode, and that got LSD banned. LSD for a while was not even, they didn't know what it was. It wasn't on any kind of schedule. That changed it. Joe Friday did, and Dragnet. So CIA researchers then believed, it might serve as a powerful interrogation tool. If a person's sense of reality could be disrupted through, through some kind of weird form of attenuation and stretching, and disrupted enough, maybe they'd become easier to manipulate or interrogate or get to confess to stuff they didn't do. That's my angle. So experiments with LSD took place in numerous settings. Some were conducted with volunteers who were told they were participating in psychological studies. Others were far more troubling. In several cases, individuals were given LSD without their knowledge, and these poor people included college students, psych patients, military personnel, even random civilians. I mean, just think about that. All of it, you don't know what's happening. You think you're losing your mind. You're hearing things, seeing things, and out of nowhere. And they never were told. Oh, by the way, don't feel bad. Yeah, you might want to come down from the ceiling. We did that to you. It's not you. You're not losing your mind. Think about the relief somebody would feel. But they didn't do that. Because that's part of the study, too. See, the CIA sometimes administered the drug secretly to observe how people behaved under its influence and how people behaved around people under the influence. And perhaps the most bizarre chapter of MKUltra involved a CIA operation known as, you ready for this? This is the best name. You ready? Operation Midnight Climax. That's right, my friends. Operation Midnight Climax. Ask for it by name. Now, in this program, the agency established safe houses in cities such as San Francisco, New York, and prostitutes working for the CIA, government-issued prostitutes, would lure men into these apartments where the unsuspecting guests were secretly given LSD, and agents then watched the interactions through one-way mirrors, okay, while recording the results. Now you can tell me these people were sick pervs. Come on, skeeves, pervs, paraphiles. Oh, this is science. Meanwhile, they were probably alone at night, and you know. Well, the official rationale, this is good, was to study how people behaved when intoxicated by powerful hallucinogens, particularly in situations involving sex or vulnerability. Yeah, like they didn't know, okay? All right, but anyway, another Midnight Climax, ask for it by name, be a great cologne. Anywho, another really disturbing, to put it mildly, incident connected MKUltra involved a scientist named Frank Olson. Now, Olson was working with the U.S. Army on biological weapons research and had professional connections to the CIA projects. In 1953, those were the glory days for this, he attended a meeting where colleagues secretly slipped LSD into his drink without informing him, as they are wont to do, okay? Over the following days, this poor man, Mr. Olson, reportedly experienced severe psychological distress. About 9 days later, he fell from a 10th floor hotel window in New York and died. And for decades, Olson's death was ruled a suicide, of course, through this defenestration or fenestration. Later, there were investigations that raised questions about what really happened, and members of his family also argued that he might have been silenced because of, as you can imagine, sensitive information he possessed about classified experiments. And while the exact experiments remain disputed, the case became one of the most cited examples of the human cost of associations and connections with MKUltra. Now, the program remained secret through the 50s and 60s. Even many CIA employees were unaware of its existence. But the secrecy began to unravel in the early 70s. And this was amid growing public skepticism about government actions during the Vietnam era. Intel agencies came under increased scrutiny. And then in 1973, CIA Director Richard Helms, oh, this guy's good. Oh, James Jesus Angleton, check this dude out. Helms had that kind of Bruce Springsteen underbite. He could never leave nose prints. Anywho, this guy was really one of the spooks. Dulles and also Casey, later these were dyed in the wool. I mean, really hardcore. Don't think George W. Bush. There were some CIA heads, but not like these fellas. Well, Helms theoretically ordered the destruction of most MKUltra records. Well, the records, but the programs didn't stop. I mean, they said they did, but they didn't. And thousands of documents were shredded in an attempt to eliminate evidence of the program. However, some financial records of scattered files survived. And these fragments later allowed investigators to reconstruct at least part of what had occurred. Now, what's really interesting, 2 years later, the scandal became public when the United States Senate Select Committee to Study Governmental Operations with Respect to Intelligence Activities began this incredible investigation of abuses by intel agencies. And the committee uncovered evidence of MKUltra and held hearings exposing, among other things, its activities and the revelations and revolutions. Shocked. I mean, shocked. Americans never heard of this. Testimony revealed that the CIA had funded secret research at universities and hospitals. Remember the church committee, the Rockefeller committee, or the hearings, but church committee in particular. Remember the whole heart attack gun, and I mean, this is wild. But when they heard what they did at hospitals and how they conducted drug experiments without informed consent, and they explored methods that bordered hell were psychological torture. And then further investigations by the United States Congress and the United States Department of Justice all confirmed, all verified that the program had indeed operated for years with little to no oversight. And victims who had been unknowingly subjected to experiments later filed lawsuits against the government, as you can well imagine. And in several cases, the U.S. government issued settlements or formal apologies. I'll take the settlement. MKUltra ultimately became a sad symbol of the darker side of Cold War intel. And don't think it's gone anywhere. Please, don't be naive. They were just caught. And during that era, the perceived threat from hostile powers led to, just an extraordinary secrecy and aggressive experimentation. Because what they did was they revealed some stuff, but they went into hiding. And intel officials believed that they were engaged in some kind of a global competition in which technological or psychological breakthroughs could determine and affect the balance of power. Yeah, you know what it's about. But yet, this is interesting. The program also revealed the ethical dangers of unchecked, unregulated authority. Remember ethics? Remember that? His thing called ethics? Morality? Remember that, kid? See, researchers had experimented on really vulnerable people who were never given the opportunity to consent. And some of these poor people suffered long-lasting, decades of psychological damage. In fact, others were never even told they had been part of an experiment. Think about that. Think about treatment if you went to a doctor, if a psychiatrist knew that the cause of this was something artificial or kind of environmental versus something that might be more naturally evolving. It could affect the way treatment was administered. And today, MKUltra continues to, fascinate historians and journalists and the public. But I think the reason is partly historical, but also partly mysterious. Because most were destroyed, so they say, complete scope of the program remains unknown. But historians know it involved at least about 150 to 200 research projects, and that means people. But they can't say exactly how many or who they were, because all of those were destroyed. And the lack of documentation has allowed MKUltra, unfortunately, to become, a major topic in popular culture and conspiracy. There's that word again, discussions. And movies and novels and television shows all frequently reference this. And what's interesting to note is simply this. You got to understand a couple of things, which is critical. And this is why it's important that we talk about that here. Whenever we talk about what's going on with Charlie, whenever you talk about what's happening with Candace, she's mentioned it. These topics come up. And to the untrained, uninformed, unresearched, it sounds nuts. And I don't want you to be gullible and believe everything, but lose the part of your I don't know, naivete or your innocence, and expect the worst from these people. Remember, they will tell you this is war. We're not doing this to be mean. Our goal is not to subvert and subjugate humans that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to do something else. We're trying to fight wars and battles for terrorism. And then what they'll do is they'll take all of their minions, all of their paid, and you know what's happening right now. You hear these people all the time, especially in the world of social media. In fact, don't forget what I told you. In 2016 or so, Moby said that he had either CIA or Intel wanted to buy or rent his social media platform because he was so popular. They're doing this now. And it's not that $7,000 story. It's elsewhere. And forget bots. It is a game. It is a 24/7 game. And war is psyops. This is war. And everything from the information that you are being told and not told to the way you're being looked at. And don't think right now that MKUltra is gone, because if I had to think of two instances where I would bet anything they were involved, is Mark David Chapman in the assassination of John Lennon, and in Sirhan in the assassination of RFK, Bobby's father. I would refer you, do some research, Thane Eugene Caesar. Read it. See, there are names that are there the whole time, but unless you become more actively involved with these great research tools, you'll never know this. They hide it in plain sight. First, these people, they love symbolics, or symbolism rather, or symbolics, or shambolics. Symbolism, semiotics, symbology. They love code words. They love signals. They love sobriquets and different, shibboleths and ways of communicating. just like everybody else does. Religions do it with vestments and symbols, and it's part of the human form. But they also love the idea of manipulating consent and manipulating knowledge and manipulating what many people believe to be the truth. Remember, when it comes to Candace, they're saying she's crazy, she's an anti-Semite, she's hateful. Yeah. We've heard this before. But remember, once you know the secret to the magic trick, you'll never see the magic trick the same way again. Once I show you how they cut a lady in half, that old routine, you'll never be able to see it again. You'll never unsee it. And what our duty is, I think, as good citizens and those of us trying to spread the holy word of truth, is to remind you of what reality is. So, that being said, I'm going to do more of these because I think it's important that to remind ourselves of the past, but past is prologue. What happened then is what's happening now, and will continue. It'll have a different name, but also don't forget there's new. We have, of course, Peter Thiel. We have Palantir. We have better metadata that can be used and incorporated in various means and methodologies to affect and change human American opinion and the like. So anyway, that's that. Okay? You got it? You dig? Good. That's what's important. Now, my friend, as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you, especially to those of you keep worrying about the truth, keep paying attention to the truth, and also for some of you who are brought over from Candace, God bless you for that. Also, let me remind you of some other things too. You want to talk about something real scary? Let me tell you what's happening right now. What's happening to our children, and what's happening to kids all over the country, all over the world, and how social media are becoming something that nobody even can imagine, how it's being used deliberately as a means to brainwash. We didn't really talk about menticide, but brainwashing, but that's exactly what's happening with kids. That's exactly what's happening. And the kids who are hurting themselves, harming themselves, and whose innocence is being completely shattered by some very sick and diabolical, devilish, Luciferian, satanic, whatever you want to call them, people who are utilizing the power of social media to destroy and to contaminate and hurt and harm and derail being a kid, which is tough enough as it is. There's a lot of screwed up people out there who've never had anything happen to them. But the number of kids who lose their lives. So if you believe in if you want to do something, continue to follow my wife, Lynn Shaw, at Lynn's Warriors, and I thank you for that. Go to her YouTube channel at Lynn's Warriors. Once you get into the subject, you will be shocked, and you will be amazed at how big tech is fighting back and how many American politicians are just basically relenting, and they're just submitting because they've been paid off. In any event, thank you for that. I can't say enough how important it is for you to like this video. I think you know that. Please hit that little bell so you're notified of live streams and new videos. Make sure you subscribe to us and accept my thanks. And now it's time. Oh, and I put some questions in the comment section for you to weigh in on. And now I'd like you very much to, if you could and you would, comment as you see fit.